All right, so given an integer size, and keep in mind an integer means a whole number, could be positive, could be negative, but I think in this case it's gonna have to be a positive one because we wanna return an array of that length and we wanna fill it with a whole bunch of ones. So we could probably think of a few ways of doing this one. So let's see. I guess just to keep it like as straightforward as possible for this first one, let's just say something like this. Let array be assigned the value of this empty array. And that's the thing that we're going to be returning in the end here. What are we going to do with this array? Well, basically we'll say for let I be assigned the value of 0 while I is less than size, I++ at every iteration. We basically want to say array.push I. Yeah, just give it, or actually wait, not I, 1. Even simpler than that, just a 1, because they're all just 1s in this case. So let's run that and we'll see if it gives us what we're looking for. Maybe we need to do less than or equal to size. Maybe we need to start this at a different number. Maybe we need to make some other change I'm not thinking of. But as for now, we'll see what happens. I guess I might as well just put this on one line because it doesn't really have anything else in it, so we can get away with that. Yeah, okay, great. It's passing the sample test. Is it going to pass the hidden test? Let's find out. Ooh, yeah, it does. Okay, so that's nice. Good. Good to know. All right, so hey, thanks. I don't know if it's all that impressive, but anyway, going back to this thing over here, we could just call it a day and move on, but you know, I think we can probably come up with some other ways of doing the same thing. So let's just reset this for now. We'll paste this guy down here and we'll put a big old 1 in front of it. Or behind it, I don't know. Depends on your perspective, I guess. As for now, we're gonna try another way of doing this. So what would be another way of doing this? Well, I suppose we could do something, or actually, hold on. Before we go any further, I need to make one change to this. So I used a let, but could I have used a constant? Would that have worked? It seems maybe a bit counterintuitive here, because basically array is changing, right? We're filling it with stuff. We're giving it a bunch of 1s, as many as 10 of them. Yeah, as many as 10 of them, it looks like. So aren't we changing array? How can we get away with doing a constant here? Doesn't that not make sense? I thought it was that we can't reassign a constant variable. Well, as it turns out, and this is a common misconception, I was definitely guilty of this misconception for a long time, the constant refers to the binding here. So we're saying that when you see the word array, it always refers to whatever this array is. Now, the stuff that's inside this array might change, but the binding between this word and this thing here is what's constant here. So that's what's not changing. That's the part that's constant. All right, let's cut that out and reset. Just wanted to mention that real quick, and we'll move on for now. So let's just refresh that. Okay, cool. So how should we continue from here? I mean, there are a few other ways we could do this. I don't really know what order we should do this in, but I guess maybe if we wanted to make something that was sort of similar to what we have down here, right? Except it didn't use a loop, let's say. Let's say we have an issue with using a loop. We don't want to use a loop. We want to do something that's loopless. Okay, well, that's fine. I accept the challenge. Let's use recursion. Might as well, right? So we could do something like return size, you know, and if size is 0, then it'll just return, let's say, this empty array. If it's not 0, then it'll return an array with 1 in it, as well as createArray with size -1. Would that work? Oh, wait a sec. Let me just put in a spread operator there. Yeah, let's try that. Let's see if that works. Oh, hey, it works. Just, well, actually, hold on. Let me first explain this, and while I'm doing that, I guess, I'm going to delete the spread operator, and I'm going to show you what it would look like if we didn't put that in there. So basically, what's happening here is when you call createArray, it's saying, okay, well, what's the size? Is it something that would be typecast to true, in other words, a number that's not 0, or is it something that would be typecast to false, in other words, 0? So we're starting with something that's definitely greater than 0, so we don't have to worry about that on the first iteration. So for the first iteration, guaranteed, we're going to be returning this this and not this one over here. If anyone here is unfamiliar with ternaries, basically this is a condition here. It's a Boolean, or it's something that gets typecast to a Boolean. We ask it the question, is this true or false? If it's true, we're going to return this. If it's false, we're going to return that. So that's basically the idea here. So if it's false, if we do get down to 0, we're just returning this empty array. If it's true, then we're returning an array containing a 1 and containing basically whatever we get returned when we call the same function, createArray, but with a size 1 less than the one we called it with this time. So notice if we don't put in the spread operator, we've got a bunch of nesting that's happening. So we've got an empty array. Okay, hold on. We've got an array containing a 1 and also an array which contains a 1 and an array which contains a 1 and an array which contains a 1 and an empty array. So that's not what we want, which is why we're doing the spread operator. Spread operator is basically going to break down these walls. You know, it's going to remove the arrayness. Basically, it's going to bust all the stuff out of the array. So that's sort of the idea here. So we'll return that. Seems to be working. Let's make sure it passes the hiddens. And if it does, we'll move on to a new strategy. Okay, cool. Yeah, that seems to be passing. If you really wanted for this to be like a one-line solution, we could do something like this, where we say createArray is assign the value of something that takes size to this result. And that would be like a little tighter, I guess, but I'm just going to leave it the way we had it. I think, you know, just for the sake of consistency, we'll just keep it all the same sort of notation. Let's call that createArray2. We'll cut it out. We'll reset the situation. We'll paste that back in. And so now we have two different ways of doing it. One of them used a loop, one of them used recursion. Now we want to move on to something a bit different. Something, let's see. I don't want to go right for the simplest stuff quite yet, so let's do something a little weird and hacky, okay? Let's return a string containing a 1 dot repeat size many times. Okay, we could do something like that, and that's going to be pretty close to what we're looking for, right? We could say something like dot split to make that actually an array, in which case this is getting closer to what we're looking for, but notice it is actually making a difference that these are all strings, whereas these ones are just numbers. Well, we could deal with that, but before we do, I just want to talk about this split thing. I mean, split, yeah, it means we're splitting up the string. We could split it in a variety of ways, but here we're just saying split it at every empty string, so like in between each character, basically. Just to make it a bit more clear what we're actually trying to do, we could do something like this and say all of this is going to be the argument of our Array.from. So we're taking the array object, not an array, but, you know, array, like the Platonic form array, and we're calling its method .from. I don't remember what you call a method like that, but there's a difference between something like array.from and something like just some array, like .map, you know, like .map is an array method, .from is technically also an array method, but they're different things in the sense that we call this one using like array, a capital A array, whereas we call this one using an instance of an array. So I'm not exactly sure what we call that. I don't think it would be too tough to look up, but anyway, if anyone knows, let me know. But for now, oh, is that called the higher order function? I thought a higher order function was just a function that like operated on other functions or something like that, but I could be wrong about that. One way or another, we've got this thing over here. So we've got array.from, that's one way of doing it. But, you know, maybe you're looking at that and saying, I don't know if it's clear if you don't know what the .from means, or, you know, maybe the fact that there is this difference between something like a .from and a .map, that they both work on, like the difference between working on array versus an array. Anyway, point is, maybe you're used to seeing stuff like this, right? Like these square brackets for arrays. Well, that's not quite what we want, right? We don't want just an array containing the string 1111. And so we can split it up. We'll do a spread operator like we were doing downstairs. So we'll do this, we'll run that. It's basically going to pull these all apart so they're each individual elements. So not only is that, I think, a very good syntax for indicating that you want to make an array out of something, there's also very efficient syntax in the sense that I think out of all the examples we looked at, this is the one that's going to take up the least amount of bytes, the least amount of characters. Okay, so what do we have here? We have something that's really close to what we're looking for, but basically we want to perform an operation, a function on every single one of these things. And it's the same one. We basically just want to make it a number, right? So we could do dot map, and for each element x, we're going to return parse int of x. Okay, so we could do something like that, and there we go. So that'll work. Now, Rainbow Sprinkles asks, doesn't split work on nums? I'm not actually sure. I guess we could try it, right? So, okay. Oh yeah, we could also just use that syntax that we saw a while back. I'm actually going to keep it parse int for now, just because, you know, clarity. I find it more clear that way. Let's just run a quick test on this. So let's say, yeah, split. I don't know if it works on numbers. Let's see, like, because what would we be splitting according to, right? Like, let's just type out some random number. Maybe that's too big to be an integer. It has 2 7s in it, so let's just say dot split with an argument of 7. Let's see if that works. I'm not sure if it will or not. No. It doesn't like that. Let's try it with just empty string. No, it doesn't like that. So, okay. Oh, yeah, we could also break down the parents and just make it plus x, like that. So, yeah, that works. You know, if we were trying to code golf or something like that, maybe that would be a good way to do it. So far, it's the shortest, but the claim I'm going to assert is that we won't have to worry about making this one the shortest, because there are going to be other ways of doing this that are going to be even shorter and even nicer. So speaking of which, I guess we might as well take a look at one of those other strategies that we can use. Let's grab these guys, reset the code window, paste these down in here, and we'll continue with another strategy. So we mentioned Array.from a minute ago. Let's try that again. Array.from. Oh, and I just had another idea. Okay. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So Array.from is a really neat one, actually, because there are lots of different ways we can use this. Like, we could use an Array.from on a string. We could use it on, I think, like a set, for example. We could even use this for an object. In fact, there's a really strange way we can use this. We've technically done this a few times before, but if we do something like this, just Array.from this object with just one property, length, and the length is 5, what do we get from this? Well, we get null because I didn't put a return in front. Let's try that. So return that, and we get an array with 5 elements, and every one of them is null. Okay, well, that's not all that helpful, having them all null. So we can actually give Array.from a second argument, and it's going to be a function. Okay, so this is a function where we could put in like the element itself and its index. And the element itself is not going to be really helpful because they're all nulls to begin with, but we need to specify, we need to put it in there so that we actually know that this is the second argument, because this is assuming, or it's interpreting this function as basically the second argument being the index of whatever element we have in here. So the index is actually useful because if we return the index, then we can see it makes it pretty easy to do something like a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, something where we're counting up numbers. This is probably my favorite way to instantiate an array like that, but I don't know. I'm not sure if this is considered like hacky, if this wouldn't work in some browsers or something like that. I'm not really sure, or if it's inefficient. You'd have to check the performance, but it's pretty slick. I think it's neat. It's kind of, it's one of those things that like, it feels like a missing piece almost, you know, like the sort of thing you want to have in JavaScript, and now we do. So anyway, point is, we've got this, but we don't actually want I. We just want it to be a bunch of ones, right? So yeah, we could just do something like that, and instead of 5, we want it to be size, right? We want it to be the size that they specify here. So let's run that, and yeah, that seems to be working. In fact, we don't even need these arguments. It's not like we're using them here, so we could just do something like this, and already this is looking shorter than the previous one over here. So that's nice. We'll submit this. Oh, okay, there's a polyfill available for older browsers. Oh, great. Good stuff. It feels like that's the case these days for most things, right? Like, I'm not actually totally aware. Like, do developers really need to worry that much about, like, using modern JavaScript? Like, is there pretty much a polyfill available for everything? Like, if you just put Babel or something in there, are you pretty much safe using whatever syntax you want for JavaScript? I'm not really sure. If anyone knows, let me know. But as for now, so this one's cool. Let's make that number 4. Reset the code again, put a bunch of spaces in, paste it in. Okay, now, what are we gonna do? Let's do something like this. We know that there are only gonna be 10 of these, right? So what if we just do one with 10? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, if we were to run that, well, that's not gonna be right for, well, okay, partly because we're not returning anything again. Oh, geez, I gotta remember that. Okay, so this is not passing the test. It's too much. It's too big. So we only want part of this. I guess we just do like something like this, you know, do a slice on it and just say we want the elements from 0 up to, but not including the element at index size. So let's run that, and that works too. So that's totally fine as well. Not quite as efficient or elegant as some of the previous ones, but hey, it works. Okay, so ATD says, I think actually CSS is more of a problem for developers. That's where older browsers can sometimes stumble. So then what if you're using, what do they call those? Like a CSS preprocessor, like Sass or Less, or what's that other one, Stylus? Do those kind of take care of those sorts of issues? Because like they've got all kinds of extra tech on them, right? You can use like variables and mix-ins and stuff like that, right? So like, wouldn't they sort of have some fallbacks to them? I'm not really sure. That's what my intuition is telling me. But anyway, let's say that's going to be number 5. We'll go back to the description over here. Let's clear all this stuff. We're going to reset the code, confirm, make some more space, paste this in. And, geez, I guess before we did all that, I should have probably asked myself if I had another way to do this. But yeah, I think there's at least one more way we could do it. Let's just, let's say, let's start with, we already did start with return. I wasn't looking at the screen. Okay, so we got the return in there already. Apparently I did remember it, double remembered it this time. We're gonna say array, return array with an argument of size. Okay, array with an argument of size. What's it gonna give us? Well, kind of similar to what we got when we were doing Array.from and did this kind of stuff over here. I think what I'm about to do is maybe frowned upon, but let's see. Array.size, array at size.fill 1. Well, it's pretty efficient. I mean, it's definitely getting all the ones in there. It's getting it to the appropriate size, and it passes the hidden test. So yeah, I don't know. Take your pick, whichever one of these you think is best. It's up to you. And if anyone has any other suggestions, any other ways we could do this, hey, let me know. I'm open to it.